Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're looking into The Organized Mind by Daniel Levitin,
Yeah.
and we're really going to be exploring practical strategies to handle, I think, something we all struggle with, which is just information overload in today's world.
Absolutely. It's not just about decluttering your physical space, your desk or your closet.
Right.
It's really about understanding how our brains, function, especially in this digital age,
Right.
and then kind of using that knowledge to our advantage.
Yeah, because our brains, they evolved for a world that is so vastly different from the one that we live in today.
It really is. Think about it this way. The average American owns thousands of times
Oh, wow.
more possessions than, our hunter-gatherer ancestors.
That's a crazy statistic. It's no wonder we feel so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Our brains are just like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, they're not equipped to handle just this constant
Yeah.
barrage of information and stimulation.
Yeah. And that overload, we all know.
Mm.
It can manifest as stress,
Mm.
difficulty focusing, just feeling like you're constantly being pulled in a million different directions.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I love that Levitin dives into the world of our attentional systems.
Yes.
Because it's not just one system, it's four interconnected components
Oh, interesting.
that play a role in how we actually process all this information that we're talking about.
Okay, so break those down for us.
So, first we have what's called the mind-wandering mode.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking, well, mind-wandering, how does that help me be organized?
Right, it sounds counterproductive.
Right. But it's actually super crucial for creative thinking, problem solving. It's that space where your brain is making those kind of like unexpected connections and generating new ideas.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then there's the central executive mode, which is probably what, most people think of when they think of like getting stuff done.
Yeah, that sounds more like tackling my to-do list.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. So it's all about focused, task-oriented work
Mm-hmm.
where, we need that laser-sharp concentration.
Gotcha. Okay, and then I'm sure we've got the filter
Right.
that helps us prioritize what's important and, block out all the noise.
Right. The attentional filter.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's what, helps us focus on a conversation in a crowded room or, read a book while ignoring the distractions around us.
Right.
And then last but not least, we have the attentional switch.
Okay.
And that's the one that helps us transition kind of seamlessly between those different modes.
So like I can go from, mind wandering to focused work
Yeah.
to, back to, something more creative.
It really is remarkable, like how effortlessly our brain, can switch gears.
Yeah.
From focused work to creative brainstorming to filtering out distractions. It's really quite remarkable.
So, okay, I'm starting to get a sense of like all the different things our brains are doing.
Yeah.
How do we actually apply this knowledge to like get our lives more organized?
So that's where Levitin brings up the power of what he calls externalization.
Okay.
And think of it this way. Instead of trying to remember everything in your head, you're shifting that burden
Okay.
to external systems.
So that's where things like calendars and to-do lists and note-taking apps, that's where these come in.
Exactly. These tools, they basically act as an extension of your memory. So you're freeing up mental space
Okay.
for more important tasks.
Now, I remember he uses a really compelling analogy in the book.
Yes.
He compares our brains to visual illusions.
Yes. Just like our eyes can be tricked by optical illusions, our brains can actually be fooled by cognitive biases.
Oh, interesting.
Especially, when we're faced with that information overload.
That makes sense. So that's where these external systems become even more crucial.
Right.
Because they help us overcome those biases
Yeah.
and make like more objective decisions.
Absolutely. You're taking the emotion out of it in a way.
Interesting. Okay. Now let's move on to, I think, a concept that's so core to how our brains work, which is categorization.
Mm.
So, our brains are constantly categorizing information.
Right.
It's how we store memories, how we retrieve them later.
Absolutely. It's how we make sense of the world around us, essentially.
That's fascinating. And, think about, I always think about a hardware store
Yes.
when I think about this, because you walk in and it's like all the tools are grouped not just by type, but by function.
Exactly. And that mimics how our brains naturally form these associative networks.
Oh, interesting.
So we can leverage this by actually organizing our homes and workspaces
Yeah, okay.
in a way that kind of makes sense to our brain.
So instead of just randomly stuffing things in drawers,
Yeah.
we should be thinking about like categories that align with our natural thought process.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, let's talk about something I know we all struggle with, which is email.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in today's world, it is a constant source of interruption,
Yeah.
and it can just, completely disrupt our workflow.
It really can. And, Levitin points out this interesting difference between email and, like, traditional mail.
Okay.
With traditional mail, there was no expectation of an immediate response,
Nah.
But email, it's like this instant.
Yeah, you're expected to reply right away.
Right. This urgency.
Like this never-ending stream of like demands on your attention.
Exactly.
What does he recommend? What does Levitin recommend for, tackling that beast?
Well, he's a big proponent of setting specific times
Okay.
to check email.
Oh,
Rather than, constantly interrupting your day.
gotcha.
To respond to each message as it comes in.
So it's like you're batching it.
Exactly.
Right.
And, that way you regain control over your time.
Right.
And you can actually focus on what truly matters, without the constant ping of new emails coming in.
I love that. Okay, so let's dive into something that I think is just so fascinating.
Yes.
Crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
It's like revolutionized the way that we access and process information.
It really has. It's about tapping into the collective intelligence of a group.
Right.
Rather than just relying solely on individual knowledge.
It's like, think about the Waze app.
Yeah.
It uses real-time data from, millions of users.
Exactly.
To provide accurate traffic information, suggesting the best routes.
That's the power of crowdsourcing
Yeah.
in action. And it's not limited to technology, right?
Right. I mean, we can apply this principle to our own lives.
Absolutely.
Whether it's, asking friends for recommendations or getting feedback from colleagues on a project.
Yeah.
It's just this recognition that, we don't have to have all the answers ourselves.
Right.
And, leveraging the collective wisdom of others can lead to better decisions and solutions.
Absolutely. Two heads are better than one.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to, I think something that's really essential for all of us for a fulfilling life, which is managing our social world.
Yes. In our increasingly interconnected lives, keeping track of relationships and social obligations, it can be a real challenge.
Yeah, because it's more than just remembering names and birthdays.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's about nurturing those connections.
Yeah.
Making time for those meaningful interactions.
Yeah.
So what are some tips? What are some things that we can do?
Well, Levitin, he suggests using what he calls a tickler system.
Okay, a tickler system.
Yeah, which is basically just scheduling reminders
Okay.
to connect with people regularly.
So it could be like a calendar reminder to call a friend or send a
Right.
birthday card.
Exactly.
Or just plan a coffee date.
Yeah.
I love that.
It takes the burden off our memory, and it ensures that we don't let those important relationships slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
Life gets busy, and it's so easy for those things to fall by the wayside.
That's so true. Okay. Now let's delve into something that, can really impact how we perceive others. And it's this cognitive bias called the fundamental attribution error.
Yes. And this is our tendency to overemphasize personality traits and underestimate situational factors
Oh, interesting.
when we're kind of explaining someone's behavior.
Okay, so give us an example of that.
Yeah, so it's like, let's say someone cuts you off in traffic, right?
Right.
And you immediately think, oh, that person's a jerk.
Yeah.
But you're not considering the fact that they might be rushing to the hospital
Right.
or, dealing with some kind of personal emergency.
Right.
That's the fundamental attribution error in action.
Oh, that's so interesting. And Levitin, he uses a fascinating example from a study at Stanford.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that one.
So the participants were randomly assigned roles as either questioners or contestants
Okay.
in like a mock quiz show.
Got it.
And the questioners, of course, had the advantage. They knew the answers.
Right.
And despite knowing that the roles were randomly assigned, the observers consistently rated the questioners.
As smarter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's a great example of that bias.
Yeah. And it just shows how easily, we can fall prey to this. We attribute intelligence
Yeah.
to the questioners simply because of their role. And we kind of overlook that situational advantage they had.
Absolutely.
So being aware of this, I think, can help us be more understanding,
Right.
and less judgmental.
It's about giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about an area where understanding probability can have a huge impact. I'm thinking decision-making,
Yes.
especially, when it comes to our health.
Right. We're constantly bombarded with statistics and probabilities.
Right.
But it's crucial to understand, like, how to actually interpret those correctly to
Right.
make informed decisions.
So Levitin uses a hypothetical scenario involving a fictional disease
Oh,
called
yeah.
blurritis
Blurritis.
to illustrate this. So imagine you test positive for blurritis,
Okay.
and the treatment has potential side effects.
Gotcha.
To make a truly informed decision, it's not enough to just know, like, how accurate the test is.
You also need to know the base rate.
Right,
Right.
which is, how common the disease is in the general population.
Exactly.
And that base rate, it it can drastically change the probability that you actually have the disease,
Exactly.
even if you test positive.
Even if you test positive.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So what's his advice then?
Always ask your doctor
Okay.
about that base rate
Okay.
and the accuracy of the test
Okay.
before making any treatment decisions.
So you're really advocating for people to be an active participant in their healthcare.
Absolutely. It's about being informed, and making choices that are aligned with your individual needs and values.
Okay, now let's move on to a concept that I think is so powerful in shaping, like, our perceptions and choices.
Yeah.
Framing. So it's how the way information is presented
Yeah.
can influence our decisions even when the underlying facts stay the same.
Exactly.
So give us an example of that.
So, for example, imagine two different framings of surgery versus radiation therapy survival rates.
Okay.
One framing might focus on the 5-year survival rate, while the other highlights the risk of immediate death during surgery,
Okay.
right? Even though the overall outcomes might be statistically similar, the way it's presented
Yeah.
can lead people to favor one option over the other.
It's like, it's so subtle, but it can have such a powerful impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I think becoming aware of these framing effects,
Yeah.
it helps us make more objective decisions,
Hmm.
and resist, potential manipulation.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in this age of the internet, it's more important than ever to talk about how we combat information overload. I mean, we are constantly bombarded with information from all sides.
Oh, yeah, it's like a fire hose.
So, navigating this, it really does require a discerning mind,
Yes,
right? And a healthy dose of skepticism.
absolutely. Levitin emphasizes the importance of critical thinking and source verification. Don't just accept everything you read online.
Right. At face value.
At face value.
Yeah.
We need to actually engage with information, question assumptions,
Right.
evaluate evidence, seek out multiple perspectives.
I love that. Now, are there any resources that you recommend for people to, like, help with this?
Yeah, websites like Snopes and factcheck.org, those are great
Okay.
because they specialize in, debunking misinformation.
Okay, so we've got some tools in our toolkit.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into more strategies for organizing your mind and maximizing your cognitive potential. So stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into the organized mind. We were just talking about being more discerning with the information that we consume online.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, let's talk about something, a technique our brains actually use naturally to handle complex information. It's called chunking.
Chunking.
Chunking. Is
Yeah.
that like when I break down, a big project into smaller tasks?
That's a great example. Our brains, they naturally group information into, smaller, these manageable chunks to kind of reduce cognitive load. Think about like phone numbers. Like we remember them in those chunks, like the area code, the prefix, and the line number.
Right, right. Not as like a string of 10 digits.
Exactly. Exactly. And we can apply this, to anything really, from, learning new vocabulary words to managing complex projects.
Okay, so instead of looking at my to-do list and being overwhelmed by this massive list of things I need to do, I should be thinking about breaking those down into smaller chunks.
Exactly. It creates this sense of accomplishment as you complete each chunk,
Right.
which, can really help boost motivation and reduce procrastination.
It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Exactly.
So, okay, now let's talk about something that I think we all know is so important, but it's often neglected. It's sleep.
Sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
The magic elixir.
Yeah. I know I should get more sleep,
Yeah.
but it always seems to be the first thing to go when I'm super busy.
Yeah. And skimping on sleep it's like robbing your brain
Oh, wow.
of its ability to function at its best. because during sleep, that's when our brains are really hard at work.
Really?
Consolidating memories,
Sure.
processing information, making connections.
So it's not just about resting our bodies.
No.
It's really giving our brains the time that they need to, like, do their work.
Exactly. And, Levitin, he actually describes these three key processes that happen during sleep.
Yeah.
First, there's unitization, where our brains take, separate pieces of information
Yeah.
and combine them into this unified concept.
It's like our brains are putting together a puzzle while we sleep.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
Okay.
And then there's assimilation, that's where new information is kind of integrated into our existing knowledge networks. It's like adding new books to a library.
Okay.
And finding the right place for them on the shelves so we can easily access them later.
Okay. And then what's the third one?
And then last but not least is abstraction.
Okay.
And that's where our brains extract kind of general rules and patterns from our experiences. This is how we learn from our mistakes and, kind of develop a deeper understanding of the world.
Oh, wow. Sleep is like a superpower for our brain.
It really is, and without it, we're really compromising our ability to, learn, remember,
Yep.
and make sound decisions.
So we've got to get that sleep.
Oh, okay.
Now that we've emphasized sleep, let's talk about something equally vital for, I think, our productivity and creativity. And that is flow.
Flow, yes.
Yeah.
That magical state of being completely absorbed in an activity where time seems to just fly by and you're performing at your peak.
It's like being in the zone.
Yeah.
Like everything just clicks.
Yeah.
And you're completely focused on the task at hand.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that our brains, they actually use less energy during those flow states.
Oh, really?
Than when we're, distracted or multitasking.
So focusing on one thing at a time is not only more productive, it's more energy efficient.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so how do we create the conditions for flow?
Well, Levitin highlights the importance of, first and foremost, minimizing distractions.
Okay.
And creating, a work environment that promotes focus.
Okay.
He also emphasizes choosing tasks that are, challenging yet achievable.
So it's like finding that sweet spot where, like, your skills are kind of perfectly matched to the demands of the task.
Exactly. Too easy and we get bored. Too difficult and we get frustrated.
Right.
Right. But when we find that balance, that's when we're more likely to enter that flow state and, really experience that effortless concentration and, peak performance.
I love that. Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about another area where I think organization is so crucial, decision-making.
Decision-making? Yeah.
We make countless decisions every day.
Yeah.
Some small, some life-altering.
Absolutely.
And the quality of our decisions, it really does impact the course of our lives.
It really does. It really does.
So what are some strategies? What are some practical strategies from Levitin for improving our decision-making process?
Well, one of his key recommendations is to, break down complex decisions into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
And this prevents us from feeling, paralyzed by, the sheer magnitude of the decision. It's like that old adage, divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer, yeah.
He also suggests, setting deadlines for decisions, even if they're kind of arbitrary. It creates a sense of urgency and helps us avoid getting stuck in analysis paralysis.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that, like overthinking decisions.
Yeah.
So setting a deadline might help me, like, take action instead of just getting bogged down in all the what if.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes, understanding those probabilities and weighing risks versus benefits, especially for decisions that, involve our health or finances.
Yeah. It's easy to get swayed by emotions or, anecdotal evidence, but really taking a more rational approach based on probabilities can lead to better outcomes in the long run.
Exactly. And remember, even small probabilities can add up over time.
Yeah.
Right. So it's crucial to consider both, the short-term and the long-term consequences of our decisions.
Okay. Now let's zoom out a bit and talk about organization. Like in a broader sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about tidying up our physical spaces or, managing our time.
Right.
It's really about how we structure our thinking, our relationships, our lives as a whole.
It's like creating this framework that supports, our goals, our values, our overall well-being.
So it's like creating a system that works for you.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, Levitin explores different organizational structures,
Right.
both in businesses
Right.
and our personal lives.
Yeah.
And, each structure has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
So I guess what you're saying is there's no one-size-fits-all approach to organization.
Exactly. The key is to find the structure that best suits, your individual needs.
Right.
And the specific context, whether it's, a hierarchical structure in a large company or a more flexible collaborative approach, in a smaller team. The key is to have clearly defined roles and responsibilities.
So everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing, who they report to. It eliminates confusion
Exactly.
and kind of streamlines the workflow.
Exactly.
Now, this doesn't just apply to, workplaces, right?
Yeah.
This applies to families,
Yeah.
even our own internal organization.
Absolutely.
Right.
Having that clear sense of, our priorities and, how different areas of our lives fit together, it brings a sense of order.
Right.
And control.
Yeah. Okay. Let's address a challenge that I think is pretty unique to our digital age.
Yeah.
Managing the overwhelming amount of information and data that we encounter.
Oh, yeah. The data deluge.
It's only going to intensify, right?
Absolutely.
As technology advances and, the volume of data that we generate just continues to grow.
Exponentially.
I know. Levitin shared some mind-boggling statistics
Oh, yeah.
about the amount of data that we're creating.
It's really unbelievable.
I think he said, in 2012 alone, we produced 5 exabytes of new data.
5 exabytes.
That's 50,000 times the number of words in the entire Library of Congress.
It's hard to even fathom.
It is. It is. And it's not just the volume that's overwhelming.
Right.
It's the fact that much of this data is stored on devices that are vulnerable to, failure or obsolescence.
Exactly.
So we need to be proactive about protecting our data.
Absolutely.
Both from loss.
Yes.
And from becoming inaccessible due to outdated technology.
Yes. That's a really important point.
So what are your thoughts on that? What are some things that we can do?
Well, Levitin, he stresses the importance of backing up our data regularly and using multiple methods, like external hard drives, cloud storage, even physical copies of important documents.
Okay, yeah.
And it's also a good idea to choose file formats that are, widely supported and likely to be readable in the future.
Yeah, because we don't want our, precious memories and important documents to become, inaccessible because of outdated technology.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we've talked about the volume of information, but now let's talk about evaluating information.
Right. Because it's more important than ever
to
be, discerning consumers of information, especially online, where, misinformation can spread like wildfire.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Levitin, he highlights the dangers of what's called selective windowing.
Selective windowing.
Yeah. And this is a technique that's often used by, marketers, politicians, even scientists to present a biased view of reality. They're highlighting information that supports their narrative while downplaying or omitting information that contradicts it.
So it's like cherry-picking data to fit a predetermined conclusion.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so we need to be aware of this tactic.
Yes.
Right? And really seek out multiple perspectives on any issue before we form an opinion.
Multiple perspectives, yes, absolutely.
Now, Levitin also emphasizes the importance of understanding the difference between correlation and causation.
Oh, yes. Just because two things are correlated doesn't mean one causes the other.
Right.
Right. There could be a third factor influencing both. He uses the example of the correlation between ice cream sales and crime rates.
Right.
Both tend to rise in the summer. But that doesn't mean eating ice cream causes crime.
Right. More likely the hot weather is a contributing factor to both.
Exactly.
We need to be critical thinkers.
Yes.
Right. Ask questions like, what's the evidence? Are there other possible explanations?
Exactly.
Okay. Now let's, I want to talk about something that I think is kind of fun.
Okay.
And challenging. It's a type of problem solving often used in tech job interviews.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Fermi problems.
Fermi problems. I've heard of those.
Yeah, Fermi problems, named after physicist Enrico Fermi. They involve making quick estimations.
Oh, okay.
Based on limited information.
So how many piano tuners are there in Chicago?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Or how much does the Empire State Building weigh? Now, the goal isn't to find the exact answer. It's really to demonstrate your ability to think critically. and break down complex problems into smaller parts.
So it's about, like, applying logic
Yeah.
and estimation skill.
To arrive at, like, a reasonable approximation.
Exactly.
Okay, so Levitin recommends, like, starting by identifying the key variables involved.
Okay.
And making, like, educated guesses based on your, like, general knowledge.
Right. So for the piano tuner problem, you might consider, the population of Chicago,
Right.
the percentage of households with pianos, how often pianos need tuning, and then you could multiply those estimates to get a ballpark figure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fun and engaging way to, like, exercise your problem-solving muscles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's tackle a topic that I know has been widely debated. It's the impact of technology on our attention spans.
Oh, yeah.
Some experts argue that, like, the constant stimulation of the digital world is, like, rewiring our brains
Right.
and making it harder to focus.
Absolutely. It's a valid concern.
It is. And Levitin, he acknowledges these concerns, but he also points out that our brains are incredibly adaptable.
They really are.
So maybe we're developing new ways of processing information and, like, managing that constant influx of stimuli.
Yeah. He actually cites a study where people who frequently use Google search were actually better at filtering information and focusing on relevant details.
Oh, wow.
So our brains might be adapting to the demands of the digital age, by becoming more efficient at filtering out the noise.
Yeah. But he does, I think, also offer a word of caution, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He cautions that we need to be mindful of our technology use and ensure it doesn't, hinder our ability to engage in deep focused work.
It's all about finding that healthy balance.
Right.
Right. Between, like, harnessing the benefits of technology
Right.
and, like, preserving our cognitive abilities.
Exactly. So he suggests, setting aside, dedicated times for, email and social media.
Right. And creating kind of distraction-free zones for tasks that require that sustained attention.
Now, I want to turn our attention to something that I personally find so enriching, and that is reading.
Ah, yes. The joys of getting lost in a good book.
I know. And Levitin, he dedicates an entire chapter to this, the benefits of reading for, like, our cognitive development and our overall well-being.
Yeah.
And he argues that reading high-quality fiction and, like, literary nonfiction, it can actually enhance our empathy.
Yes.
Our social skills, and even our ability to focus and concentrate.
It's like stepping into someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
And experiencing the world through their eyes.
And he cites a study showing that people who read literary fiction were better at understanding others' emotions and perspectives.
Yeah. And I think, perhaps because, literary fiction often explores, complex characters and nuanced relationships, and it challenges us to consider different points of view. Yeah. And I love that he also highlights the importance of, reading aloud to children.
Oh, yeah.
It exposes them to, rich language and, complex ideas.
Right.
It strengthens that parent-child bond.
It creates a shared experience, that fosters a love of reading and learning.
Yeah. And, he suggests that reading aloud can also help children develop, better attention spans.
Absolutely.
Improve their listening skills.
Yeah. It's such a simple yet powerful way to nurture their cognitive and emotional development.
I love that. Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's just recap some of those key strategies we've covered for organizing our minds. We've talked about chunking information, prioritizing sleep, creating conditions for flow, improving our decision making, understanding organizational structures,
right,
and then of course, managing information overload, evaluating sources critically,
right,
and embracing the power of reading.
Yeah, these are powerful tools for anyone seeking to, enhance their cognitive abilities and, live a more organized and fulfilling life.
And just remember, organization, it isn't about, like, achieving perfect order.
No, it's not about perfection.
It's about finding what works for you.
Right.
And making small, sustainable changes over time.
It's about creating a life that aligns with, your goals, your values, your well-being.
Okay, let's take another quick break. When we return, we'll explore some final takeaways and insights from the organized mind. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our final segment on the organized mind. I'm really enjoying these practical strategies for just navigating the complexities of our modern world.
Yeah, absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's one more concept from Levitin's book that I find particularly intriguing. It's what he calls organizational white space.
Organizational white space.
Yeah.
That sounds almost like a Zen concept. What exactly does that mean?
Think of it as a sanctuary for your mind. It's a space where you can kind of disconnect from that constant stimulation of the digital world and just, allow your thoughts to breathe.
Oh, okay. So it's like the mental equivalent of, decluttering our physical spaces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Levitin, he gives the example of musician Sting, who reportedly dedicates 4 hours each day to, personal reflection and creative exploration, completely unplugged from all devices.
4 hours. Wow. I don't know if I could manage that, but I definitely see the value in, creating some mental breathing room.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, a huge block of time. It could be, as simple as, a walk in nature without your phone, or, 10 minutes of meditation, or even just, staring out the window and letting your mind wander.
Okay, so the key is to just, give our brains a break from the constant input and, allow them to process information
Right.
and make connections in a more kind of relaxed, intuitive way.
Exactly, exactly. And this actually brings us to another important aspect of a well-organized mind, play and downtime.
Oh, yes. I'm a firm believer in the power of play. And it's not just for kids, it's essential for adults too.
It is. Levitin, he argues that play isn't frivolous. It's crucial for our cognitive and emotional well-being. When we engage in playful activities, we stimulate creativity, reduce stress, and even enhance our problem-solving
It's
abilities.
about tapping into that
Yeah,
that
you're right.
childlike sense of wonder and,
Yes.
approaching challenges with a more flexible and adaptable mindset.
Exactly. We shouldn't take ourselves too seriously, making time for activities that bring us joy and allow us to kind of reconnect with our inner child. It's essential.
So let's recap, some of the key takeaways from our deep dive into the organized mind. We talked about externalizing information, managing distractions,
Yeah.
creating white space, prioritizing sleep, embracing play, cultivating a growth mindset.
Yeah, these are powerful strategies for anyone, seeking to maximize their cognitive potential
Mhm.
and live a more organized and fulfilling life.
And remember, organization, it isn't about achieving perfect order.
No.
It's about finding what works for you
Right.
and making small, sustainable changes over time.
It's about creating a life that aligns with, your goals, your values, and your well-being.
Well, this deep dive into the organized mind
Mm.
have been incredibly insightful. I'm walking away with a renewed appreciation for just the incredible capabilities of the human brain
Mm-hmm.
and a sense of empowerment knowing that, we have the tools to harness those capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure exploring these concepts with you. And remember, the journey to an organized mind, it's ongoing.
Right.
There's always more to learn and new strategies to discover.
So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep those minds organized. If you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to share your thoughts and experiences. Use the hashtag #OrganizeMindDeepDive. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, happy organizing.